We had the book, The Memory Keeper's Daughter by Kim Edwards.
Okay, here's a list of the 5 main characters throughout the story, the one we thought most importantly. So I'll start with David. David was probably the most talked about character, one of the most talked about characters in the book. He's the father of Paul and Phoebe, and he is married to Nora.
You can stop using the pointer, it's going to be a distraction.
Okay.
Okay.
And okay, so let's start off. So the stormy night. So David and Nora's pregnant, and David's a doctor, so you gotta kind of know that he plays an effect. So he kind of knows how to deliver a baby and stuff. So he delivers their baby. Paul comes out first, and Phoebe comes out. So he notices something's wrong with Phoebe, and has defects. And so he basically starts tells Nora that it's not the baby's not going to make it, and he told his nurse to take the baby to institution. And basically he starts this one big lie and kind of plays a big role throughout the story. So, and the next character is Nora. And
I guess I'll take Nora. Nora is the mother of Phoebe and Paul, like we said. She kind of changes throughout the story. At first she was kind of excited to be a mother and to be married to David, and after she finds out Phoebe died, or thinks Phoebe died, she starts to act differently, and then she starts having affairs with other men throughout the story, and then she finally just gets a job to stay away from home and doesn't have to see David, but she tries to be there for Paul, but kind of can't.
Caroline is the nurse who is helping David deliver his baby, and he tells her to take Phoebe to this institution, and when she got there she saw how poor the conditions were and she couldn't leave the baby there. So she skips town and starts raising this baby as her own, and basically goes through the whole story with being Phoebe's mother, sort of, I guess.
And Phoebe and Paul are the children. Paul lives there with his mom and dad and is really interested as a child. He's very childish in general. He is interested in everything. He went by the river and found fossils that him and his dad were looking at. But as the story goes on, Paul becomes a very rebellious child, and it's because of his parents are having so many problems with their relationship that they don't really see Paul as there anymore. So Paul just kind of rebels by doing drugs and playing music, and Phoebe is just there with Caroline. And when Nora meets Phoebe, Phoebe was like, "This isn't my mom, she's my mom," you know. So, yeah, that's about the kids.
so here's some key vocab terms. Each of us picked the most important vocab terms. So this story is basically based around this little girl, Phoebe, who has Down syndrome. So I think it's key to know what Down syndrome is. And it's a chromosome defect in a person, causes broad facial profile, short stature, and intellectually impaired.
And back when the story takes place in the 60s, they didn't really know how to deal with this. They kind of just sent them all to the institution and hoped that they could take care of it. Now, obviously, there's better practices, but and then discarded, get rid of something. That's basically, they keep going. When Nora finds out that David got rid of their daughter, that's basically what she uses that word. So.
Yeah, and then the affairs is what we talked about, like with other men. They were kind of basically like they don't last very long, but they're like very passionate supposedly, but then they just end.
Who is she?
Nora has the affairs, yeah.
Are you gonna define affairs, or you
Yeah.
just gonna tell the story?
Romantic or sexual relationship that happens between two people, one being married and the other outside of the marriage.
We use dark room too because David, he spends all of his time taking pictures. That's how he kind of copes with getting rid of their daughter, and he just makes his big studio. So he has a dark room. It's a photography developing room, so that way they could develop back then.
And we had family on there because in our meetings we talked a lot about family and whether your immediate family is what family is. Like the people you live with at home. And we came to the conclusion that no, we consider more people that are friends basically family. Like if they treat you better than most people would and do anything for you, that's considered your family as well. And yeah, a group consisting of parents and children living in a household is the definition from the dictionary of family.
Okay, summary. You want to do this one?
Sure. Well, I guess we basically already said the summary. It was 1964 when it first happened. It was a really stormy night, and he called one of his colleagues to come in, but the doctor couldn't make it in, so he had to deliver his own with this nurse. And like I said, he didn't know that his wife was pregnant with twins. She had their son. He was fine, but then when the second baby came out, she had Down syndrome, and actually, David had a sister when he was younger who died from defects like this, and he didn't want to go through that again, so he felt that it was best to send the baby away to an institution, but he told his wife that she actually died. So,
He has to live with the decision now.
he has to live with knowing that the baby's actually alive, and his wife spends basically the whole book coping with the loss of her daughter, even though she's still alive, so.
So that's pretty good summary for that. Okay, some big ideas, and this is Tucker's like main point / big idea.
Like Caroline taking the baby, that part. So when Phoebe was born and after David said he didn't want her anymore, she was tasked with bringing it to the institution where she would just be taken care of there and no one would have to know about her. But when she got there, people didn't actually treat people with Down syndrome very well, so she found it best to keep Phoebe and bring her back was what her main idea was. But she made a decision to take Phoebe, and then after that decision, it kind of just, the rest of the story kind of revolves around that decision, and Phoebe will just keep coming back and into the story, whether it's on David's side about how he regrets not actually keeping her, or Caroline on how Phoebe is doing better and better with her life as she goes on.
Can you clarify for your audience, when you're saying Caroline takes Phoebe, she just brings her home and continues working with David, or?
No, she decides to basically run away to a different state and just raise Phoebe as her own child.
But she still keeps in contact with David through letters.
Yes, and
She
David's
wouldn't
sending money to her.
But she refused to tell David where she was living. She didn't want him to find her or the baby.
Yeah.
So,
And is it Jared's big idea?
the question we had was, why does Nora seem to have so many affairs, and she doesn't really seem to care about that she's still married to David? I think that, or we all thought that she was having all these affairs because she's coping with the loss of her child, and she doesn't know how to deal with it. And the person that she should go to for support is her husband, but he basically puts up a wall between them because he's living with this lie and he can't tell her about it. So they just, throughout the book, they're basically just living together. They don't have any connections basically, and she just keeps having affairs with these random guys that she meets because she wants to feel loved and she wants to be able to talk about, her issues, and she can't do that with her husband, so she just goes on, basically has affairs with a bunch of guys throughout the book. So
Now, here's Dalton's big idea.
Why does David focus more on the pictures in his own family? That would be because it's his way of coping. He's not like Nora and goes and has affairs with everybody else. It's a way that he says that pictures say more than it captures the moment. So it's more of a hobby as well. It distracts his mind from everything, but then yet explains everything to him better than words can themselves. And even at the party, when Nora was having a party that she set up, he was still on his camera, and Nora told him to put it away, but he didn't want to because it was just big pictures. He didn't see it as much of a big deal with having the camera. He didn't care. It was just what he did, and then Nora didn't like that very much, so she told him to put it away. But other than that, yeah.
Okay, so my big idea was, how might each of their lives have been different if David had not handed Phoebe to Caroline that day? So instead of, so David, as we are in the book, he gives the baby to Nora and tells her to take it to an institution, or Caroline, my bad. And okay, so just imagine if he had the baby and showed Nora that, and they kept and raised Phoebe. That would have changed it changed the whole entire book, because this book's based around this big lie. So it would have changed the plot and everything for this book,
We didn't think there'd even be a story, obviously.
because there'd be no like.
Just be normal life.
Would there be no story, or would you have a very different
A
story?
very different story.
And how would that?
It'd be a normal story.
It'd be a
Like,
boring-
it'd be
Well, yeah,
There wouldn't be this big lie hiding throughout the whole story.
wouldn't be all the secrets that they keep from each other. There wouldn't be probably as many.
Good points.
She wouldn't be having affairs.
So what would it be about instead?
Be about
About
just
raising
raising.
a
Probably just how to raise a
girl
kid
counts.
with Down syndrome.
And would that affect their relationship, their marriage?
It probably would have
not.
brought them closer together than pushing them apart. But
And here's some critical responses we found. Okay.
well, it just basically says that this lady, as she said, it usually takes her a week or two to read a book, but when she started reading this one, she couldn't put it down. It was just
Mind grabbing.
so gripping, and she had it done in 2 days, it said. So she says it raised a lot of issues about how you would have reacted in the same situation, which it does. That's what a lot of our questions were based around,
It's about family.
was how you would have reacted in this situation. And it's a very incredible discussion book, it says, so that made it very easy for our group meetings.
Okay, and the second one we found was from the Pittsburgh Post Gazette. So we'll read it. The masterly written, a compelling story that explores universal themes, the secrets we harbor, even though those we love, ability to rationalize all manner of lies, and our fear that we will always be something, unknowing about the people we love the most.
Like I said, it's just basically like, people's biggest fear is, you love someone, you think you're able to trust them, but they actually have secrets that they don't even tell you about, basically. It's a really great book, so.
So do you agree with this one or disagree
Yes.
with this one?
We agree with both of them, they were both for it, that it was a really good book.
So who in this text is rationalizing their lies?
The reader.
The reader is rationalizing whose lies.
Well, their own and the people in the books.
Okay, which character in the book
Well,
is
all of them.
rationalizing their lies?
David mostly, but all of them have lies that they keep
Yeah.
from each other.
Like Nora has the affairs and she doesn't tell David.
Okay, keeping a lie is different from rationalizing something. Rationalizing something is saying this is okay because this. Which character does that and how?
Well, David does it because like I said, his sister died when she was young from birth defects, so he's basically saying it's okay that I sent my daughter away because I didn't want to deal with that again. Nora does it because she says, well, David put up these walls and we can't ever talk, so that's fine for me to have affairs.
Anybody else?
Caroline says that it's okay to take the baby because she doesn't want to leave the kid at the institution. Paul says that it's okay to do weed and do music because his parents don't care about him. It's all in all, every character has its own rationalization of what they do.
That's it.
Class, any questions about this text?
No, it's good.
No? So, who would you recommend read this book and why? What group of people?
I say,
At the beginning, we thought you asked us to see if it'd be more for women readers or men readers, and we figured, more for women, but I actually honestly got into it, and I don't ever read, so.
Yeah. And
it's
you'd
just
be-
one of
I
those
think
types
anyone
of, it's
could.
one of those types of books that'll just suck you in.
I think it'd be for anybody over the age of like our age up, because I don't think anybody lower than that will understand much that's going on.
What wouldn't they understand?
What's going on and like what kid thinks around it, it's just like wow, there's institutions for kids that
Mhm.
aren't like me. Like
This is just a higher reading level, I guess.
yeah.
Is this book one for people who want to know more about Down syndrome, or is this,
It's just
or
a-
is that just
It just tells
an
us-
element?
yeah,
That's
it's
just-
an element.
It's what it revolves around, and it
All
does
right.
tell a lot about the struggles that Caroline has raising the baby,
Yep, and
but it
what-
doesn't go into,
Yeah.
What's wrong
I mean-
with the person?
yeah.
In all reality, I thought Phoebe would play more of a bit, like a bigger role in this book, but it wasn't really that. Just more of everyone and their own problems.
Do you ever see the point of view, or is it just?
It's
the
just,
adults?
well, the point of Phoebe's, I'm guessing, to start that big lie that created the whole entire story in the first place. And David's lie he told his wife Nora.
Yeah, she's basically the pivot point of the whole story of why it started.
Thank you.